It is funny how the world works, certainly in this business. I can recall sitting there with Stuart Scott at 2:30 in the morning on SportsCenter, tossing to my next guest to give us a live update from Aspen or someplace where there was some sort of a half pipe going on. And now he is the executive producer and host of the docuseries Vice World of Sports, currently airing on VICELAND and soon to be on the Worldwide Leader itself. New episodes air on Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern. Selema Masekela, good to see you, Sal.
It's so funny you tell that story because, A, we both had a lot more hair than
no doubt.
Me, far more. But you and Stu were really like the two guys who gave me the most sort of like, let's help this guy who probably doesn't know much about being a broadcaster, but knows about his sport. And you were always so gracious and kind, man. Like, it literally was a difference maker in me being able to forge this path.
Wow, that's nice of you to say that.
But true.
Because I remember, I mean, a lot of people, when it was something was on ESPN2, looked at it differently. And the X Games as well. I mean, I've got Tony Hawk coming into the studio tomorrow.
Nice.
And, those games were absurdly popular. They still are, obviously.
Yeah, but it definitely was like sort of a fever pitch, especially, I'd say, from '99 when Tony did the 900 in San Francisco, and suddenly people were like, oh, this is something we should pay attention to. Probably all the way up into the mid to late 2000s, it had that feeling like it was a Super Bowl of action sports, but you didn't have to just be a fan of those sports. People who were sports fans started watching the X Games, and I think that changed everything.
And in terms of Vice World of Sports, a lot of people have seen, obviously, Vice on HBO and things of that nature. Is this just going to be the sports version of that? How would you describe this show that you're VPing and hosting?
I think tonally it is. Like, I met Shane Smith at a Google conference last year, and we started talking, and he kind of was asking my theories about what I wanted to do with a sports show. And I said, let's make a culture show, like a people and culture show that happens to have sports as a through line, and give people an opportunity who may not even be into sports or know much about the place that we're going, an opportunity through the strength of the story to want to be invested and learn about this place or the people and its cultures. And it's been the most fun that I've ever had in my 17 years.
Well, you've been literally all over the map. I mean,
yeah, I get to sit in the good part of the plane now.
Well, it's like you have truly hit the wide world of sports. I mean, what's the place and the story that you think is the most exotic that you've been able to cover so far?
Probably the most exotic was I went to Eton in Kenya to do a story about the Kingali people, basically the most dominant runners in the history of the world. This sort of small percentage of Kenyan people win 86% of all marathons or long-distance races in the world. So we went there, this beautiful place in the Rift Valley.
Just to find out what's what?
Just the birthplace of mankind, just to find out what's what.
What'd you find?
We found that it was a bit of a mix of grit and determination of people who basically live on farms and don't have all of the same opportunities that we might have here, coupled with a temperate climate at 8,000 feet and the ability to run. And you mix all those things together, and then there was this priest who moved to Eton about 40 years ago, knew nothing about running, but was fascinated by it and became a coach. And he started getting some discipline and giving people the opportunity to work with some of that natural ability in their settings, and just started churning out incredible runners. And
the running preacher is what you're saying?
The non-running preacher.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely one of my favorite stories. And I think just here in the States, I went to Pine Ridge, South Dakota. There's a Lakota Sioux Native Indian reservation where they play res ball, high school basketball, but like the fastest small ball you've ever seen. And there's this really crazy rivalry between these two high schools, Pine Ridge Thorps and the Red Cloud Crusaders.
Yes.
And it's our season finale, and I think that it's going to blow people's minds.
VICELAND's Vice World of Sports, new episodes Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. I have Sal Masekela here, at Sal Masekela on Twitter, here on The Rich Eisen Show. So right now, in the mainstream American world of sports, what do you think is the best story right now? What's going on right now?
The best story for me, I'm kind of fascinated by the CTE story, actually, with the NFL. I don't know if it's the best story, but it's from the congressional findings yesterday, and just
Well, Bubba Smith, it was announced today, had CTE. They announced that was an announcement today.
Wow. Just the idea that perhaps they might have tried to direct influence with money to have an outcome different than what science wanted, that's something that I find concerning.
Well, obviously the NFL is the biggest sport that's out there, but in terms of the X Games,
Today, it was announced that Dave Mirra,
Right.
Dave Mirra, the most decorated athlete, second most decorated athlete in all of X Games, they finally revealed today that when he took his life February 27th, it was from CTE. His wife decided to be really brave and dig deep. We all sort of suspected it. And then today on ESPN, Alyssa Roenick did an incredible piece with the wife, and he was a dear friend. I mean, I was friends with him for 20 years. I was his team manager at Reebok before I ever got into television. And I can't tell you how many athletes I saw in the early 2000s, late 90s, that were lying in the flat bottom of a vert ramp or a half pipe, came to, everybody cheered, and then that person came out and took their second run. Same athletes, countless times, X Games, not X Games, action sports competitions for years, and we just didn't know. So if you came back from a concussion, it was hero status. And the idea that you came back and took a run, sometimes won the contest.
Immediately, right.
Immediately, what possibly could have been wrong with you, other than you, quote unquote, got your bell rung? So it wasn't just the NFL. I think it's just our culture in general. It was something that you saw as hero status. Then you find out that that's the exact opposite situation, and that there's this long-term thing, that's the seed that's planted that has a strong chance of killing you. That changes the whole narrative of what's tough and being hard.
No doubt about that. I have Selema Masekela here on the Rich Eisen Show, and in terms of what's going on in the NBA playoffs, I kind of had a little bit of fun with it at the top, but it does sound like a VICELAND piece to find out how does Bismack Biyombo go from the Congo and wind up playing in Toronto?
Yeah.
And capturing an entire continent, right? North America.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm captivated by this guy and what he's been. I mean, DeRozan, we understand, can fill the net. Kyle Lowry's a fascinating story in his own case about blowing out his knee and Villanova and kicking around the NBA and now finding his spot. But this sounds like, not to tell you how to do your job or what to look at, but I mean, this sounds like a piece.
You'll listen, it'll be an associate producer of the Congo basketball piece,
Nice.
Parentheses, Rich Eisen.
Thank you.
I like the underdogs in general. I think Lowry and DeRozan, when their natural vibe with each other is something that you feel like you're watching two people who are really good friends playing ball together.
Yes.
And when they do have their confidence on, I love what they've done the last two games. And then Biyombo just to show up and be like, I'm putting all of Toronto on my back is awesome.
He's been incredible. Meeting LeBron at the rim.
I mean, like their chances.
How
can you not at this point?
I know.
Anything's possible.
At this point, it's best of three.
They win the next game, it's an open door.
Well, there's no doubt about that.
They got to win one in Cleveland.
I know.
I also am a massive Game of Thrones fan.
Okay.
So when I saw that your subject matter today was about the etiquette of tweeting Game of Thrones.
What is your stance on this, Sal?
People should tweet cryptically. But when people give away, especially if I go on Twitter and the East Coast has already seen it and people are giving away the whole thing on a Sunday night, it's bad etiquette.
Well, where do you stand on what I sent out? I just sent out hold the door with a check mark.
That's fine.
What do you think? That's agreed, right?
That's fine. I said, if you check my Twitter, I said from here on out, it's going to be restrain the door, stop the door from progress, a few other things, never again hold the door.
Okay.
No one knows what that means.
But Sal, if people follow you or Rich, people that follow Rich click that, because that's an ambiguous tweet during the NBA playoffs.
Right.
People might think it has something to do with that. They click it. All of his followers then comment. And if you read the first or second one down, you see what this guy wrote. Who wrote
Most heroes don't wear capes.
Yeah,
some of them
just hold the door, and it's a picture of Hodor. And now you're knowing the whole line that Hodor's got something big to do with
I still don't know how he's going to
episode.
hold the door or what it means.
Can't be responsible for how people follow up.
Thank you so much.
But you can be responsible for tweeting in the first place.
True. But a show like that, that stirs all of your emotions, your fingers just start moving. And I think it's a matter of letting your fingers be ambiguous.
Well, you were ambiguous. I was ambiguous.
Ambiguous fingers.
What's not ambiguous is you hitting on something to continue to read on. And by the way, have you seen the photographs that people are putting the face of Hodor next to the hold buttons on elevators now? Yeah. I love that. That's fantastic.
Beautiful thing.
Hey, man, it's great to see you. Great catching up.
Thank
with
you, man.
Come back.
Yeah, I want to come. If you decide to run the combine again next year,
Well, there's no if. I'm going.
I'd like to come and cheer you on.
Thank you, sir.
The best thing. I was telling you before the show. I was laying in a hotel room, couldn't sleep in Australia in Melbourne at like 4 in the morning. I just happened to click it, and it was a moment. I was like, yeah, Rich.
Thank you.
Sub
Being
6.
six, sub 6.
Sub 6.
And then did that put you to sleep after that?
It did.
soon?
I slept like a baby.
Yes. Thank you for coming on the Human Xanax show, Sal. Good to see you, bud.
great to see you,
You
man.
got it. Congrats
Thank
on
you.
all your success.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.